My name is Samantha Mitchell, and I'm 27 years old. Standing at my sister's extravagant wedding venue, I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation as my father's voice boomed across the elegant ballroom. "Samantha belongs with the staff," he announced loudly enough for every guest to hear, pointing toward the catering table tucked away in the corner. The crystal chandeliers seemed to mock me as I walked past family members who avoided eye contact, their designer gowns rustling with discomfort. Just as I reluctantly took my seat among the surprised catering workers, a distinguished man in an expensive charcoal suit approached our table, his eyes locked on mine with an intensity that made my heart skip. Before we dive into this story of family betrayal and unexpected redemption, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button if you've ever felt like the black sheep of your family. Make sure to subscribe because trust me, what happens next when this mysterious stranger recognizes me will completely change everything you think you know about family loyalty. Now, let me tell you how one humiliating moment at my sister's wedding became the catalyst for the most incredible transformation of my entire life. Growing up as the middle child in the Mitchell household meant living in the shadow of my younger sister Rebecca, who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. While Rebecca received a brand new BMW for her 16th birthday, I got a lecture about responsibility when I asked to borrow $20 for gas. The pattern had been established early and reinforced constantly throughout our lives. Rebecca's college tuition was paid in full by our parents, complete with a generous monthly allowance and a fully furnished apartment near campus. When I graduated high school with honors, I was handed a stack of financial aid applications and told that building character through struggle would make me stronger. The months leading up to Rebecca's wedding had been a masterclass in exclusion. Despite my experience managing high-end restaurants and my genuine desire to help, I was systematically left out of every planning decision. When I offered suggestions for the rehearsal dinner venue based on my industry knowledge, Mom dismissed me with a wave of her hand, saying Rebecca had already chosen somewhere special. I discovered later that they had selected the most expensive restaurant in the city, the same place where I had been hoping to apply for a management position. The irony wasn't lost on me that my family could afford to spend more on one dinner than I made in 3 months. Rebecca was marrying Jonathan Whitfield, whose family owned a chain of luxury hotels across the East Coast. Their engagement announcement had been featured in the society pages of our local newspaper, complete with a professional photo shoot and a 3-paragraph description of their love story that read like a fairy tale. The wedding budget exceeded what most people make in several years, and every detail had been meticulously planned to reflect the Whitfield family's status and wealth. Crystal centerpieces imported from Italy, French champagne flowing like water, and a custom-designed wedding dress that cost more than my annual rent. The seating chart revelation came 2 days before the ceremony when I accidentally glimpsed it during a final venue walkthrough. My name wasn't listed among the family tables, where even distant cousins and my father's golf buddies had been assigned seats. Instead, I found myself relegated to table 18, nestled between the photographer's assistant and the evening cleanup crew. The discovery hit me like a physical blow, but when I confronted my mother about what surely must be a mistake, she avoided my eyes and mumbled something about space constraints and how the staff table was actually quite nice. The morning of the wedding, Dad made his intentions crystal clear during what he called a family meeting. "Rebecca's day needs to be perfect," he announced while adjusting his expensive tuxedo in the full-length mirror. "That means everyone needs to know their place and stay there. Samantha, your attitude lately has been concerning, and we think it's best if you keep a low profile today." The words stung more than any physical slap could have. My attitude had consisted of working 60-hour weeks to pay my rent while contributing to Rebecca's bridal shower and bachelor party costs that I couldn't afford. When we arrived at the venue, a stunning historic mansion with manicured gardens and a ballroom that could accommodate 300 guests, the divide became even more apparent. Rebecca held court in the bridal suite surrounded by her sorority sisters and new in-laws, while I was directed to a small side room to change into my bridesmaid dress. The dress itself was another humiliation, a deliberately unflattering shade of chartreuse that Rebecca had selected specifically because she knew it clashed horribly with my complexion. While the other bridesmaids received professional hair and makeup, I was told the salon was running behind and I'd need to do my own. The ceremony proceeded without incident, though I noticed the photographer consistently positioned me at the edges of group shots or excluded me entirely from intimate family moments. Rebecca's smile was radiant as she exchanged vows with Jonathan, but I caught her shooting satisfied glances in my direction whenever I appeared uncomfortable or out of place. The receiving line was particularly painful, as guest after guest greeted my parents and Rebecca with warm enthusiasm while offering me polite but distant acknowledgments, clearly having been briefed on my diminished status within the family hierarchy. As the cocktail hour began and guests mingled in the garden, sipping champagne and enjoying elaborate hors d'oeuvres, Dad found me admiring the venue's architecture and studying how the catering staff managed the complex logistics of serving so many people. "Time to find your seat," he said loudly, his voice carrying across the outdoor space where other guests could easily hear. "Samantha will be sitting with the staff tonight," he announced to a nearby group of relatives, as if this were a perfectly normal arrangement that required no explanation or justification. The walk to table 18 felt endless as conversations died around me and guests turned to stare. The catering workers at my assigned table looked as uncomfortable as I felt, clearly understanding that my presence among them was meant as punishment rather than preference. The head server, a kind woman named Maria who had been working events like this for over a decade, quietly moved to make space for me while shooting disapproving looks toward my family's table. As I sat down among people who were working hard to make this evening special for my sister, I realized that they showed me more genuine courtesy and respect than my own blood relatives ever had. The distinguished man approaching our table commanded attention without saying a word. His charcoal suit was impeccably tailored, his silver hair perfectly styled, and his confident stride suggested someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. As he drew closer, I noticed his sharp blue eyes were focused intently on me, and a strange expression crossed his face that looked almost like recognition mixed with disbelief. When he stopped directly in front of our table, the catering staff immediately straightened, clearly recognizing him as someone significant, though I couldn't place him at all. "Little Star," he said softly, using a nickname I hadn't heard in 15 years. The champagne flute in my hand nearly slipped as memories came flooding back of a tall, kind man who used to visit our house when I was a child, always bringing me small gifts and listening intently when I chattered about my dreams of running my own business someday. Victor Lancaster had been my father's business partner and closest friend until he suddenly disappeared from our lives when I was 12 years old. Dad had dismissed questions about Victor's absence with vague explanations about people growing apart and business relationships ending naturally. "Victor?" I whispered, hardly believing my eyes. The boy who used to sneak me extra cookies and tell me stories about successful women in business had grown into this sophisticated, powerful-looking man who now owned one of the most exclusive event venues in the state. "You remember," he said with a genuine smile that transformed his entire face, making him look more like the warm family friend I remembered. "I wasn't sure you would. You were so young when everything happened." The sadness in his voice hinted at complications I had never understood as a child. Victor's explanation of his disappearance came in carefully measured words that revealed a betrayal I could never have imagined. He and my father had built a successful consulting firm together, with Victor handling the creative vision while Dad managed client relationships. Everything changed when Victor discovered that Dad had been secretly meeting with their biggest clients, offering to provide the same services at reduced rates through his own company. The theft of proprietary methods, client lists, and ongoing projects had destroyed Victor's business overnight and forced him to start over from nothing. "Your father didn't just steal my clients," Victor continued, his voice remaining calm but his eyes hardening with the memory. "He actively sabotaged my relationships with potential investors and spread rumors about my competence throughout the industry. I lost everything I had worked for, including my home and my reputation. The worst part was losing touch with your family, especially watching you grow up. You were always so bright, so full of potential and kindness." The revelation explained so many things about our family's improved financial situation during my teenage years and my father's sudden ability to afford Rebecca's expensive private school. As Victor spoke, I remembered how he had always treated me differently than the rest of my family. While my parents and Rebecca often dismissed my ideas and dreams, Victor had encouraged my interest in business and hospitality. He had been the one to suggest I might enjoy working in restaurants, recognizing my natural ability to coordinate complex situations and my genuine interest in making people feel welcome and comfortable. During our visits, he would ask detailed questions about my school projects and offer thoughtful advice that made me feel valued and intelligent. The conversation took an unexpected turn when Victor began describing his current business empire. After rebuilding from the ruins of my father's betrayal, he had focused on the hospitality industry and now owned a chain of upscale restaurants across 3 states. His flagship location had just received a prestigious industry award, and he was actively expanding into new markets with innovative concepts that combined fine dining with community engagement. "I've been looking for someone to help manage this growth," he said, his gaze never leaving my face. "Someone with integrity, intelligence, and a genuine passion for hospitality." The job offer came with details that made my head spin. Regional manager position overseeing 5 restaurants with expansion plans for 3 more locations. A starting salary that was more than triple my current income, plus performance bonuses, stock options, and comprehensive benefits including executive training programs at culinary institutes. Corporate housing assistance for relocation, a company car, and a discretionary budget for professional development. Most importantly, he was offering mentorship and partnership in building something meaningful rather than just employment in someone else's dream. "I've watched your family from a distance over the years," Victor admitted quietly. "I know how they've treated you, and it breaks my heart. You deserve so much better than being relegated to a staff table at your own sister's wedding. Your potential was obvious even when you were a child, and I can see it's still there, just waiting for the right opportunity to flourish." His words were like healing balm on wounds I had carried for so long that I had stopped noticing they were still bleeding. As we talked, I became aware of my father's increasingly agitated glances in our direction. Dad had noticed Victor's arrival and was clearly disturbed by our animated conversation, though he seemed uncertain about whether to intervene. The other family members at the head table were also stealing curious looks our way, probably wondering who this important-looking man was and why he was spending so much time talking to the daughter they had deliberately marginalized. Rebecca kept craning her neck to see what was happening, her perfect smile faltering slightly whenever she caught sight of Victor's expensive watch or custom-tailored suit. Victor reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card that felt substantial in my hands, the paper thick and elegant with embossed lettering that spoke of success and attention to detail. "I have contracts in my car," he said simply. "If you're interested in changing your life tonight, we can make this official before the evening ends." Sometimes the best opportunities come from the most unexpected places. As he spoke these words, my father finally stood up from the head table and began walking purposefully in our direction, his expression a mixture of panic and forced joviality that suggested he knew exactly how precarious his position had just become. Dad's approach was a masterclass in false charm, his politician's smile plastered across his face as he weaved between tables with practiced ease. "Victor Lancaster." He boomed with exaggerated enthusiasm, extending his hand as if greeting a long-lost brother rather than the business partner he had systematically destroyed 15 years earlier. "What a wonderful surprise. I had no idea you were in town. You look fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Success clearly agrees with you." The performance was so transparent that even the catering staff at our table exchanged uncomfortable glances. Victor's response was a study in controlled professionalism. He stood slowly, his posture relaxed but commanding, and regarded my father's outstretched hand for a long moment before offering the briefest possible handshake. "Richard," he said simply, his tone neutral but somehow conveying volumes about their shared history. "I own the venue. I make it a point to personally oversee events of this caliber." The emphasis on ownership was subtle but unmistakable, a quiet reminder that Dad was now standing in Victor's domain, subject to his rules and discretion. "Own the venue?" Dad's voice cracked slightly as the implications sank in. His eyes darted around the elegant ballroom, taking in the crystal chandeliers, imported marble floors, and hand-painted ceiling murals with new understanding. This wasn't just any wedding venue. It was one of the most exclusive and expensive locations in the region, and the man he had betrayed now controlled everything from the champagne selection to the final cleanup. "That's incredible, just incredible. You've certainly done well for yourself." Victor's smile was cold enough to frost the champagne glasses. Yes, I have. After our partnership ended so abruptly, I discovered I had quite a talent for hospitality. There's something satisfying about creating authentic experiences for people who appreciate quality and integrity. Each word was carefully chosen, landing like precision strikes that Dad couldn't acknowledge without admitting his past behavior. I've been particularly successful at identifying and nurturing talent that others might overlook or undervalue. The conversation took a sharp turn when Victor casually mentioned his awareness of Dad's current business struggles. I hear Mitchell Consulting has hit some rough patches lately. Client retention issues, wasn't it? And that problematic audit from the state licensing board last month must have been quite stressful. Dad's face went pale as he realized that Victor was not only aware of his failing business but had access to information that suggested ongoing financial and legal problems that the family had been desperately trying to hide. Rebecca had been watching our interaction with growing concern, and she now materialized beside Dad with her wedding dress rustling importantly around her. "Daddy, who is this?" she asked with the entitled tone of someone accustomed to being introduced to everyone worth knowing. Her smile was brilliant but calculated as she extended her hand toward Victor with practiced elegance. "I'm Rebecca, the bride. Thank you so much for hosting our special day. Your venue is absolutely gorgeous." "Congratulations on your marriage," Victor replied politely, shaking her hand with the same professional courtesy he might show any client. "I trust everything has met your expectations." But his attention immediately returned to me, dismissing Rebecca's attempt to monopolize the conversation with the kind of social skill that comes from years of managing high-maintenance customers. "Samantha, we should continue our discussion about that opportunity one mentioned." Mom appeared as if summoned, her mother of the bride dress shimmering as she hurried over to join what was clearly becoming a family crisis disguised as a social gathering. "Victor Lancaster," she said breathlessly, recognizing him despite the years that had passed. "My goodness, how wonderful to see you again. You've certainly done well for yourself. Richard has mentioned you over the years, wondering how you were doing." The lie was transparent. Dad had spent years actively avoiding any mention of Victor's name. Victor's proposal to discuss my employment opportunity immediately and publicly was a strategic masterstroke that left my family scrambling for an appropriate response. "I believe in striking while the iron is hot," he said smoothly, pulling out his phone to send a quick text. "My attorney can have the contracts here within the hour if Samantha is interested. There's no reason to delay when everyone involved knows it's the right decision." The casual mention of attorneys and contracts sent visible shock waves through my family. When Victor announced the salary figure loud enough for nearby guests to hear, the reaction was immediate and dramatic. Dad's face went from pale to ashen gray as he processed numbers that exceeded his own annual income even during his most successful years. Rebecca's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide her shock as she calculated exactly how much money her previously dismissed sister would now be controlling. Mom actually gasped audibly, her hand flying to her throat in a gesture that drew attention from surrounding tables. "Surely that's premature," Dad stammered, desperately trying to regain control of the situation. "Samantha has responsibilities here, commitments to the family business. She can't just abandon everything on a whim." It was a transparent attempt to claim authority over my decisions, made more pathetic by the fact that I had never worked for his company and had been explicitly excluded from any meaningful family discussions about business or financial matters. The moment became even more excruciating when Dad attempted to undermine my qualifications in front of Victor and the growing number of guests who had begun to pay attention to our conversation. "Don't get me wrong, Victor, I appreciate the gesture, but Samantha doesn't really have the experience for that level of responsibility. She's been working in basic restaurant positions, nothing that would prepare her for regional management. Perhaps something entry-level would be more appropriate to start." The condescension in his voice was so thick it was almost visible. Victor's response was swift and devastating. "I've built my entire business on recognizing talent that others fail to see. Samantha's natural abilities in hospitality, her genuine care for customer experience, and her ability to manage complex situations under pressure are exactly what I need in a regional manager. Unlike some people, I believe in investing in character and potential rather than just credentials and connections." The implicit criticism of Dad's business practices hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. The family's last-ditch effort at damage control involved invoking emotional obligations and family loyalty, tactics that had worked successfully for years to keep me compliant and self-sacrificing. "Think about what you'd be giving up," Mom pleaded, her voice taking on the manipulative tone that had controlled my decisions for decades. "Your family, your roots, everything familiar. Is money really worth abandoning the people who love you?" The irony of her words, spoken while I sat at a table with hired staff rather than family, was apparently lost on her completely. As Victor calmly pulled out his phone to call his attorney, the power dynamic that had defined my family relationships for 27 years began to crumble in real time. For the first time in my life, I held cards that trumped their manipulation, and everyone present could see the old rules were no longer in effect. Rebecca's transformation from radiant bride to desperate manipulator happened so quickly it gave me whiplash. The moment she realized that my conversation with Victor posed a threat to her perfect evening and potential family financial stability, her wedding smile morphed into something calculating and cold. She glided over with practiced grace, her designer gown trailing behind her like armor made of silk and pearls, and positioned herself strategically between Victor and me as if her physical presence could somehow break the connection that was forming. "Samantha, darling," she exclaimed with sugary sweetness that made my teeth ache. "I've been looking everywhere for you. We simply must have you in some family photos before the light changes. The photographer has been waiting, and you know how important these memories will be for our family legacy." The sudden declaration of sisterly affection was so transparently fake that even the catering staff at my table looked skeptical, but Rebecca pressed on with the kind of determination that had made her successful in every manipulation throughout our shared childhood. The emergency she created around wedding photography was elaborate and convincing to anyone who hadn't spent years watching her orchestrate similar scenes. She claimed that the photographer was on a tight schedule, that the golden hour lighting was perfect right now, and that the wedding planner was frantically trying to coordinate family portraits before guests became too intoxicated to pose properly. "Mother specifically requested photos of all the Mitchell women together," she continued, grabbing my arm with perfectly manicured fingers that pressed just a little too hard to be comfortable. What I discovered later was that Rebecca had specifically instructed the photographer to minimize my presence in all important shots. During the ceremony, I had been positioned at the far edge of the wedding party, partially blocked by floral arrangements and consistently cropped out of close-up shots. The photographer, a consummate professional who depended on wealthy client referrals, had followed Rebecca's instructions without question, understanding that the bride's satisfaction was paramount regardless of family dynamics that weren't his concern. The wedding planner, a sharp-eyed woman named Margaret who had coordinated hundreds of high society events, had been explicitly told to treat me differently than other family members. While Rebecca's friends and Jonathan's relatives were offered champagne and appetizers during photo sessions, I was directed to wait inside areas and told to keep my bouquet positioned to hide what Rebecca claimed was an unflattering angle. Margaret's uncomfortable expression suggested she found these instructions distasteful, but professional obligations trumped personal opinions in her business. Rebecca's phone, which she had carelessly left face up on a nearby cocktail table while posing for photos, buzzed repeatedly with notifications that revealed the true scope of her cruelty. When I glanced down, I caught sight of a group text thread with her bridesmaids that contained messages that made my stomach churn. "Operation Exclude Samantha is working perfectly," read one message. "She looks miserable at the staff table LOL, said another. "Wait until she sees the wedding album. Barely any pics of her." The casual cruelty of reducing my humiliation to entertainment for her friends was breathtaking in its heartlessness. The social media strategy Rebecca had developed was even more sinister than I had imagined. She planned to post carefully curated wedding photos on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest that would tell a specific story about the perfect Mitchell family celebration while essentially erasing my existence from the narrative. The few photos that included me were deliberately unflattering or positioned me in ways that suggested distance from the core family unit. Her hashtags were already planned: perfect family, sister love, blessed and grateful, each one a lie that would be seen by thousands of followers. Her bridesmaids, who had been her sorority sisters at an exclusive private college, had received detailed instructions on how to treat me throughout the weekend. They were to be politely distant, avoid including me in conversations, and never invite me to participate in any of the special pre-wedding activities or photo opportunities. These women, who didn't know me personally, had been primed to see me as somehow lesser or problematic based entirely on Rebecca's poisonous characterizations. The gift registry situation was another calculated insult that I had only recently discovered. While extended family members, college acquaintances, and even some of Jonathan's business associates had been given access to wedding gift registries at upscale department stores, I had been deliberately excluded from all gift-giving coordination. When I had asked Mom about appropriate gift ideas, she had suggested that my contribution might be better as help with the wedding planning, rather than an actual present, effectively positioning my labor as sufficient while everyone else brought expensive china and crystal. Victor watched this family drama unfold with the detached interest of someone who had seen similar dynamics play out in wealthy families throughout his career in hospitality. His professional experience had taught him to recognize manipulation, entitlement, and toxic family patterns that often emerged during high-stress social events. "This is quite a performance," he murmured quietly to me as Rebecca continued her desperate attempts to separate us. "I'm curious to see how far she'll go to maintain control of the narrative." The breaking point came when I finally found the courage to confront Rebecca directly about her treatment, standing up from the staff table and walking over to where she was holding court with her wedding party. "Rebecca," I said loudly enough for surrounding guests to hear, "why am I sitting with the catering staff instead of at a family table?" The question hung in the air like a challenge thrown down at a medieval tournament, and I could see her calculating the best response to minimize damage while maintaining plausible deniability. Her response was a masterpiece of gaslighting that revealed just how skilled she had become at rewriting reality to suit her purposes. "Oh, Samantha, you're being so sensitive. We thought you'd be more comfortable with the staff since you work in restaurants. It's really an honor, if you think about it. They're the ones who make this whole evening possible." The condescending tone and twisted logic were designed to make me question my own perceptions while positioning her cruelty as consideration for my supposed preferences and comfort level. The family's reaction to my public confrontation was swift and predictable, with every member immediately rallying to Rebecca's defense regardless of the obvious truth of my accusations. Mom rushed over with soothing platitudes about family harmony and wedding day stress. Dad began lecturing me about appropriate behavior and showing respect for my sister's special day, and even distant relatives started murmuring about how I was causing unnecessary drama during what should be a celebration of love and unity. Their unified front against me was so immediate and coordinated that it felt choreographed, as if they had rehearsed for exactly this moment. Mom's request for a private conversation came with the kind of urgent desperation that had characterized her crisis interventions throughout my childhood. She grabbed my elbow with surprising strength for someone who claimed to suffer from chronic fatigue and guided me toward a quiet alcove behind the venue's main staircase, away from the guests and Victor's watchful presence. Her usually perfect composure was beginning to crack, and I could see fine lines of stress around her eyes that her expensive makeup couldn't quite conceal. "Sweetheart, we need to talk honestly about this situation," she began, her voice taking on the reasonable, motherly tone that had persuaded me to make countless sacrifices over the years. "I know you're upset about the seating arrangement, and maybe we could have handled that better, but you have to understand the bigger picture here. Victor's offer sounds wonderful, but there are things you don't know, family obligations that go deeper than hurt feelings or wounded pride." The revelation about our family's financial crisis came pouring out in a desperate monologue that revealed years of deception and manipulation. Dad's business hadn't just hit rough patches. It was hemorrhaging money due to poor investments, client lawsuits, and the same unethical practices that had destroyed his partnership with Victor 15 years earlier. They had been using credit cards to maintain their lifestyle for over 2 years, borrowing against the house to cover Rebecca's wedding expenses, and facing the very real possibility of bankruptcy within the next 6 months. "We've been hoping, praying really, that something would come along to help us through this difficult time," Mom continued, her voice cracking with what seemed like genuine emotion. "When you mentioned getting that job offer tonight, well, it felt like an answer to our prayers. If you could help us restructure our debts, maybe let us borrow against your new salary until Dad gets back on his feet, we could keep the family together and maintain some dignity through this crisis." The medical lies came tumbling out next, each one more devastating than the last. The heart palpitations that had required expensive specialist consultations were actually anxiety attacks brought on by financial stress. The mysterious fatigue that had kept her from working was depression related to their money problems, not the autoimmune disorder she had claimed. The frequent doctor visits and prescription medications that I had helped pay for over the past year had been largely unnecessary, prescribed by physicians who were told she needed documentation for insurance claims that didn't actually exist. "I know it sounds terrible when I put it like that," she said, tears beginning to streak her carefully applied mascara. "But we were desperate, and you've always been so responsible, so willing to help family when we needed it. We thought if we explained how serious my health problems were, you'd stay close to home instead of pursuing opportunities that might take you away from us. We never meant to hurt you, sweetheart. We just needed you to be available." The college fund revelation was perhaps the most crushing betrayal of all. The money that had been set aside for my education since I was a toddler, money that I had been told was, unfortunately, lost in bad investments, when it came time for me to apply to universities, had actually been spent on Rebecca's sorority dues, spring break trips, and the down payment for her post-graduation apartment. They had made the deliberate choice to prioritize Rebecca's comfort and social status over my educational opportunities, then lied about it for nearly a decade. Rebecca needed those experiences to make the right connections, Mom explained defensively. Her social network from college is how she met Jonathan, and look how wonderfully that's worked out for everyone. Your sister has always been more naturally suited for that kind of lifestyle, while you've shown such independence and resilience. We knew you'd find a way to succeed regardless of whether you had a college degree. The whole discussion was delivered with the casual cruelty of someone revealing tomorrow's weather forecast. I had been removed as a beneficiary 3 years earlier, during what they now admitted was a planned restructuring designed to consolidate family assets around Rebecca and her future children. The decision had been made during one of their financial planning sessions, and they had justified it by convincing themselves that I was capable of building my own wealth while Rebecca would need ongoing family support to maintain her lifestyle. "It's not that we don't love you just as much," Mom said quickly, apparently seeing the shock on my face. "But Rebecca's marriage opens up opportunities for business partnerships with the Whitfield family that could benefit everyone in the long run. Sometimes parents have to make difficult decisions about how to position the family for future success, even when those decisions feel unfair in the moment." The extended family's knowledge of my treatment was perhaps the most isolating revelation of all. Aunts, uncles, and cousins had been aware of my exclusion from family financial planning and inheritance discussions for years. Some had apparently expressed concerns about the fairness of treating children so differently, but those concerns had been dismissed with explanations about my difficult personality and lack of appreciation for family values. Family gatherings that I had attended thinking I was among loving relatives had actually been performances where everyone present knew I was considered less deserving of support and inclusion. The intervention they had planned was the final piece of their elaborate manipulation strategy. If Victor hadn't appeared tonight with his job offer, tomorrow's family brunch was supposed to feature a coordinated effort to convince me to seek therapy for what they termed my attitude problems and unrealistic expectations about family relationships. They had prepared talking points about my need to be more grateful, more supportive of Rebecca's success, and more understanding of the difficult position Dad's business problems had put everyone in. "We thought if we could help you see how your behavior was affecting the family dynamic, maybe we could all move forward together," Mom explained, apparently oblivious to the irony of suggesting that my reaction to their mistreatment was the real problem. Dar. Hendricks recommended a therapist who specializes in family integration therapy, someone who could help you understand your role in the family system and how to contribute more positively to our relationships. The ultimatum came wrapped in emotional blackmail that had been refined through decades of practice. "You have a choice to make tonight, Samantha. You can take this job offer and leave your family behind, probably forever, pursuing money and career advancement that will ultimately leave you lonely and unfulfilled. Or you can stay with the people who love you, help us through this difficult time, and be part of building something stronger together. But you can't have both. If you walk away from us tonight, don't expect to be welcomed back when you realize that strangers and business." Maria, the head server who had made room for me at the staff table, was the first to speak up when she noticed my distress during the family confrontation. With over 15 years of experience catering high-end events for wealthy families, she had developed a keen eye for recognizing toxic dynamics and genuine character. "Honey," she said quietly while adjusting the table settings, "I've been working your family's events for 3 years now, and I need you to know that what they're doing to you isn't normal or acceptable, no matter what they try to tell you." The pattern Maria described was both heartbreaking and infuriating. At Rebecca's engagement party 8 months earlier, I had been assigned to help coordinate with vendors while family members and guests enjoyed cocktails and celebrations. During holiday gatherings at my parents' country club, I was consistently positioned at tables with staff spouses and business associates rather than with core family members. Even at my own birthday dinner last year, which my parents hosted at an upscale restaurant, I had been expected to handle logistics like coordinating dietary restrictions and payment while Rebecca was treated as an honored guest. James, the bartender who had been observing our family's interactions throughout the cocktail hour, approached during a brief lull in drink orders to share his perspective. "I've worked hundreds of weddings, and I can usually tell within the first hour how genuine the family relationships are based on how people treat each other when they think nobody's watching," he explained while polishing glasses. "Your family's behavior toward you is the worst I've seen, and that's saying something in my line of work." The stories the catering staff shared painted a picture of consistent emotional abuse disguised as family dynamics. During the rehearsal dinner the night before, I had been tasked with managing coat check and guest parking while other family members participated in toasts and speeches. The wedding planner had been given explicit instructions to direct any problems or complaints to me rather than bothering the bride or her parents, essentially using me as a buffer to protect Rebecca from any stress or inconvenience. Marcus, the photographer's assistant, had been uncomfortable all evening with the instructions he'd been given about my exclusion from important shots. "I've been doing this for 5 years, and I've never seen a family deliberately minimize one member's presence in wedding photos," he confided during a break between posed sessions. "Usually families want everyone included, sometimes even people who aren't technically relatives. Your sister's instructions were very specific about keeping you in the background or cropping you out entirely." The floral assistants, who had been arranging and maintaining centerpieces throughout the evening, revealed another layer of calculated cruelty. Rebecca had specifically requested that my centerpiece have smaller, less attractive arrangements compared to other family tables, and that any floral gifts or bouquets be distributed to important guests rather than including me in the customary family flower ceremony. These seemingly small details were part of a comprehensive strategy to diminish my presence and significance at every possible opportunity. Catherine, the venue coordinator who worked directly with Victor on all events, shared insights that validated what I had been sensing but couldn't quite articulate. "In 20 years of wedding coordination, I've learned to recognize families that use special occasions as opportunities to reinforce hierarchies and send messages about people's worth," she explained. "Your family's behavior tonight has been particularly cruel because they're performing their rejection of you in front of witnesses, making your humiliation part of the entertainment." The other guests' observations were equally revealing when staff members shared conversations they had overheard throughout the evening. Distant relatives had been questioning the seating arrangements and my absence from family photos, with several expressing concern about what they perceived as deliberate exclusion. Some guests had actually approached catering staff to ask if there had been some kind of family emergency or conflict that explained why I was sitting separately from my relatives. The evening's security coordinator, a retired police officer named Robert who specialized in managing high-profile events, had been tracking family dynamics as part of his standard protocol for preventing disruptions. "I can usually spot potential family drama before it escalates into public scenes," he explained. "Your family's treatment of you has been creating tension all evening, and other guests have definitely noticed. Several people have asked me privately if there's some kind of situation they should be aware of." The kitchen staff, who rarely interacted directly with guests but could observe family dynamics during food service, had their own disturbing insights to share. During the plated dinner service, Rebecca had specifically requested that my meal be served last and with smaller portions, claiming it was because I had dietary restrictions that required special preparation. The chef had been confused by these instructions since no actual dietary restrictions had been communicated, but professional protocol required following the family's requests regardless of their logic. Victor's arrival and his obvious respect for me had created a buzz among the venue staff that extended far beyond our immediate table. Workers throughout the venue had noticed the dramatic shift in family dynamics when my parents realized I was talking to someone with obvious wealth and influence. "Mr. Lancaster doesn't usually spend time talking to individual guests," whispered Jenny, one of the coat check attendants. "When he takes personal interest in someone, it means he sees something special. We've all been talking about how different your family started acting once they realized who he was." The professional recognition from venue staff was particularly meaningful because their respect was based on genuine observation rather than family obligation or social expectation. Throughout the evening, various workers had noticed how I treated them with courtesy and consideration, asking about their experiences and showing appreciation for their hard work. This natural empathy and leadership ability stood in stark contrast to my family's entitled behavior and dismissive treatment of service workers. The network building that began spontaneously among the venue staff created opportunities one never could have imagined. Several team members mentioned connections at other high-end venues and restaurants, offering to provide references or introductions if I decided to pursue Victor's job offer. "Good managers who treat staff well are rare in this industry," explained David, the wine service coordinator. "Word gets around fast when someone has both professional competence and genuine character." As the evening progressed and my conversation with Victor continued to draw attention, the venue staff began positioning themselves as subtle allies in my corner. They had witnessed my family's years of mistreatment firsthand and recognized the transformative opportunity that was being offered. Their quiet support and validation provided emotional strength that helped me resist the family's increasingly desperate attempts at manipulation and control. Victor's description of his restaurant empire was both impressive and inspiring, revealing a business philosophy built on quality, integrity, and genuine care for both customers and employees. His flagship location, Lancaster's, had just received a James Beard Award nomination for Outstanding Hospitality, while his casual dining concepts were expanding rapidly throughout the region due to their innovative approach to community engagement and sustainable practices. The portfolio included everything from farm-to-table establishments to urban wine bars, each designed to serve different markets while maintaining consistently high standards. The revenge factor in accepting Victor's offer was undeniable, though he was careful to frame our potential partnership in terms of mutual benefit rather than retaliation against my family. "Success is always the best response to betrayal," he explained while outlining his expansion plans. "When people have tried to diminish you or limit your potential, the most powerful answer is building something they can't ignore or dismiss. Your family will watch you flourish in ways they never thought possible, and that will teach them more about your worth than any argument ever could." The executive training program he described sounded like a graduate-level education in business management, hospitality, and leadership. 6 months of intensive training at his flagship restaurant, learning everything from financial analysis to staff development, followed by rotations through each of his existing locations to understand different operational models. Professional development seminars with industry leaders, attendance at national hospitality conferences, and mentorship from successful restaurant owners who had built their own empires from scratch. Victor's personal commitment to my success went far beyond standard employer-employee relationships. He was offering true mentorship, sharing not just professional knowledge but also the wisdom gained from his own experience of rebuilding after betrayal and business destruction. "I see myself at your age in you," he said earnestly. "Talented, undervalued by people who should have supported you, and hungry for the chance to prove what you're really capable of achieving. I want to provide the opportunities and guidance that nobody gave me when I was starting over." The industry connections he offered access to represented decades of relationship building in hospitality and related businesses. Restaurant suppliers who could provide better pricing and exclusive products, investors interested in supporting innovative dining concepts, marketing consultants who specialized in building brand recognition for upscale establishments. "Networking in this industry is everything," Victor explained. "It's not just who you know, but who trusts your judgment and believes in your vision. I can provide introductions, but your character and competence will build the relationships." The housing solution eliminated one of the biggest barriers to accepting his offer, as relocating for a management position would typically require significant upfront costs and financial risk. Victor's company maintained corporate apartments in each city where they operated restaurants, fully furnished executive housing that was available to key employees during training periods and transitions. I want you focused on learning and growing, not worried about rent payments or security deposits, he said practically. The financial independence calculation was staggering when I actually worked through the numbers. With the salary Victor was offering, plus performance bonuses and stock options, I could be completely self-sufficient within 3 months and building substantial savings within a year. The contrast with my current situation, where I was barely covering basic expenses while contributing to family financial needs, made the opportunity feel almost surreal. For the first time in my adult life, I would have true economic freedom and the ability to make decisions based on my own interests rather than financial desperation. The non-compete clause and legal protections Victor offered were specifically designed to prevent my family from interfering with my career advancement. His attorney had seen similar situations where toxic family members attempted to sabotage employment opportunities through false claims or character assassination, and the contracts included provisions for dealing with such interference. Your family will have no power to disrupt your professional development once these agreements are signed, Victor assured me. The stock options and ownership stake represented something I had never imagined possible. The chance to build real wealth rather than just earning enough to survive. Victor's expansion plans included opening new restaurants in markets he had been researching for over 2 years, and regional managers would receive equity positions that could become extremely valuable if the venture succeeded. I believe in sharing success with the people who help create it, he explained. If you help me build something great, you should benefit from that growth. The 90-day transition plan was meticulously detailed, covering everything from resignation from my current job to relocation logistics to the beginning of executive training. Victor's team had experience helping key employees make major career transitions, and they had developed systems for minimizing stress and ensuring smooth adjustments. I don't want you looking back 3 months from now and regretting anything about how this transition was handled, he said thoughtfully. The education opportunities included company sponsorship for an executive MBA program at a prestigious university, with flexible scheduling that would allow me to continue working while pursuing advanced business education. The restaurant industry is evolving rapidly, Victor noted. The most successful managers combine hands-on experience with formal business training. I want you prepared for leadership roles that don't even exist yet. The international experience possibility opened up exciting prospects for the future, as Victor's company was exploring partnerships with restaurants in London and Vancouver. Regional managers who demonstrated exceptional performance could potentially oversee international expansion projects, gaining global business experience while building valuable professional relationships. Think beyond just managing restaurants, Victor encouraged. Think about building a career that could take you anywhere in the world. Dad's final attack came as Victor was explaining the timeline for finalizing our agreement. Somehow sensing that his control over me was slipping away permanently, Dad approached our table with renewed desperation and began making wild claims about Victor's character and business practices. You can't trust him, Samantha, he said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. He's been holding a grudge for 15 years, and he's just using you to get revenge against me. This isn't about your career, it's about settling old scores, and you're going to get hurt when he's finished playing his games. Victor's response to Dad's accusations was calm, professional, and devastating in its factual precision. Richard, I've built a successful business empire by recognizing talent and investing in people with integrity. Your daughter possesses both qualities in abundance, which is why I'm offering her this opportunity. The fact that you see her success as somehow being about you reveals everything anyone needs to know about your character and judgment. The contrast between Victor's composed confidence and Dad's desperate flailing was evident to everyone within hearing distance. The moment when I took the microphone during the traditional family toasts felt like stepping off a cliff into unknown territory, but the weight of years of suppression and humiliation finally outweighed my fear of family retaliation. Rebecca's maid of honor had just finished a saccharine speech about sisterly love and family bonds when I stood up from the staff table and walked purposefully toward the head table, my hand extended for the microphone that the DJ hesitantly placed in my grasp. I'd like to say a few words about family, I began, my voice carrying clearly throughout the ballroom as conversations died and all attention focused on the unexpected speaker. Specifically, I want to talk about what it means to be valued, respected, and truly loved by the people who are supposed to care about you most. The room's energy shifted palpably as guests sensed this wasn't going to be a typical wedding toast, and I could see my parents' faces growing pale with dawning horror. The truth-telling began with specific examples that guests could verify with their own observations from the evening. Tonight, my parents seated me at the staff table rather than with family, not because of space constraints, but because they wanted to publicly demonstrate my worth in their eyes. They excluded me from wedding planning, removed me from important photographs, and treated my presence as an inconvenience to be managed rather than a blessing to be celebrated. The birthday exclusions came pouring out next, years of deliberate slights that had been rationalized as family scheduling conflicts or oversights. For the past 5 years, my parents have forgotten my birthday entirely 3 times, and when they did remember, the celebrations were afterthoughts that occurred weeks later if at all. Meanwhile, Rebecca's birthday celebrations have been elaborate affairs planned months in advance, complete with surprise parties, expensive gifts, and guest lists that include extended family and close friends. The holiday snubs were particularly painful to recount because they represented so many missed opportunities for genuine family connection and shared memories. Last Christmas, I was uninvited from family dinner 2 days before the event because Rebecca decided she wanted a smaller, more intimate gathering. I spent Christmas Day alone in my apartment, eating takeout Chinese food, while my parents posted photos on social media of their perfect family celebration that somehow didn't include their middle daughter. The financial discrimination was perhaps the most damaging pattern to expose because it revealed the calculated nature of their favoritism and the lengths they had gone to in order to justify treating their children so differently. My college fund was secretly diverted to pay for Rebecca's sorority membership and post-graduation apartment, while I was told the money had been lost in bad investments. My sister received a brand new car for her 16th birthday while I was denied permission to get a part-time job to save for my own transportation. Guest reactions were immediate and visceral, with shocked gasps and uncomfortable murmurs rippling through the ballroom as the extent of my family's treatment became clear. Many attendees had witnessed individual incidents over the years but hadn't understood the systematic pattern of exclusion and diminishment. Distant relatives who had questioned my absence from family photos and events were finally getting answers that confirmed their suspicions about deliberate mistreatment. Rebecca's meltdown was spectacular and revealing, stripping away years of carefully cultivated image management to expose the entitled, cruel person underneath the beautiful wedding dress and perfect makeup. "How dare you ruin my wedding day with your jealous lies?" she shrieked, her voice cracking with fury as she rose from her chair with such force that her crystal champagne flute shattered against the marble floor. "This is supposed to be about me, not your pathetic need for attention and sympathy." Dad's threats escalated rapidly from angry muttering to full-volume shouting as he realized that his control over the family narrative was completely destroyed and his relationship with other guests was being irreparably damaged. "If you don't stop this nonsense immediately and apologize to your sister, you're no longer my daughter," he bellowed, his face purple with rage as spittle flew from his mouth. "You're ungrateful, selfish, and a disgrace to the Mitchell name. I should have cut you off years ago." Victor's protection came in the form of calm, unwavering support that provided an anchor of stability while my family raged around us like a storm of wounded pride and exposed cruelty. He stood beside me throughout the confrontation, his presence both physically and emotionally reassuring, occasionally placing a steadying hand on my shoulder when the verbal attacks became particularly vicious. His composed confidence served as a stark contrast to my family's hysteria. The venue's security team had been quietly positioning themselves around the ballroom as soon as it became clear that family tensions were erupting into public confrontation. Robert, the head of security, approached the head table with practiced professionalism and quietly informed my parents that if they couldn't control their behavior, they would be escorted from the premises regardless of their role in paying for the event. Jonathan's family watched the Mitchell family meltdown with barely concealed horror, clearly reconsidering the wisdom of joining their bloodline through marriage to Rebecca. Several Whitfield relatives were whispering among themselves and shooting concerned glances toward the bride, obviously calculating whether this level of family dysfunction might reflect poorly on their own reputation and social standing. The documentary revelation came from an unexpected source, Margaret, the wedding planner, who had been discreetly filming family interactions throughout the evening as part of her standard practice for protecting herself against potential liability claims. "I always document concerning behavior at events," she announced when Dad threatened to sue me for defamation. "Everything that's been said here tonight has been recorded, and the footage clearly supports Miss Mitchell's statements about her treatment." Social media explosion was immediate and unstoppable, as guests began posting videos of the confrontation on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok with hashtags that would ensure wide visibility. Wedding drama, family toxicity, and Mitchell wedding meltdown began trending within hours as people shared, commented, and debated the ethics of what they had witnessed. Rebecca's carefully curated image was being destroyed in real time by actual evidence of her character. The final ultimatum came from Mom, delivered with the kind of emotional manipulation that had controlled my decisions for decades but now sounded hollow and desperate in the context of public exposure. Choose right now, Samantha. You can apologize to your family, accept your place in our lives, and we can move forward together. Or you can align yourself with strangers who don't really know you, and lose your family forever. But if you walk away tonight, don't expect us to be here when you come crawling back. My declaration of independence felt like breaking free from chains I hadn't even realized were binding me until that moment. I choose myself, I said clearly into the microphone, my voice steady despite the magnitude of what I was announcing. I choose people who see my worth, respect my contributions, and value my presence in their lives. I choose a future built on mutual respect rather than conditional love and manipulation. And most importantly, I choose to never again accept treatment that makes me feel less than worthy of dignity and kindness. 6 months after that devastating wedding night, my life had transformed beyond my wildest imagination into something richer and more fulfilling than I had ever dared to dream possible. The regional manager position with Victor's restaurant group had become exactly the career opportunity he had promised, with challenges that pushed me to grow professionally and personally while working alongside people who valued my contributions and respected my judgment. The restaurants under my management were not just meeting performance targets but consistently exceeding them, with customer satisfaction scores reaching all-time highs and staff retention improving dramatically under leadership that prioritized both excellence and humanity. My approach to management, which emphasized genuine care for both customers and employees, had created a culture of enthusiasm and pride that translated directly into business success and industry recognition. Professional success had come more rapidly than Victor had even predicted, with other restaurant owners and hospitality executives beginning to seek my input on operational challenges and expansion strategies. Trade publications had featured articles about innovative management techniques I had implemented, and I had been invited to speak at regional conferences about building sustainable workplace cultures in the competitive restaurant industry. Personal growth through therapy had been equally transformative, helping me understand and heal from years of family manipulation and emotional abuse that I had normalized as typical family dynamics. Dr. Sarah Chen, my therapist, had specialized in helping people recover from narcissistic family systems and had provided tools for recognizing manipulation, setting healthy boundaries, and building self-worth based on internal validation rather than external approval. Victor's mentorship had evolved into something resembling the supportive father figure I had never experienced, offering guidance and encouragement that helped me develop confidence in my own judgment and decision-making abilities. Our weekly check-in meetings had become opportunities for strategic planning and professional development, but also for processing the emotional challenges of building a new life while grieving the family relationships I had lost. New relationships with colleagues and industry professionals had shown me what healthy adult friendships looked like, based on mutual respect, shared interests, and genuine affection rather than obligation or manipulation. The chosen family I was building included people who celebrated my successes, supported me through challenges, and appreciated my company without expecting anything in return except honest friendship. The apartment Victor's company had provided in downtown Portland was a revelation in itself, representing the first living space I had ever inhabited that was truly my own, decorated according to my preferences and filled with possessions that brought me joy rather than serving anyone else's needs or expectations. The simple pleasure of choosing my own furniture, artwork, and daily routines had been more meaningful than I could have anticipated. Rebecca's marriage had begun showing cracks within 3 months of the wedding, as Jonathan and his family gradually recognized the manipulative and entitled behavior that had been hidden beneath her charming exterior. Several mutual acquaintances had reported that Jonathan seemed increasingly uncomfortable with Rebecca's treatment of service workers and her explosive reactions whenever she didn't get her way in social situations. The apology attempts from my family had been transparent efforts to re-establish contact when their financial situation became truly desperate, rather than genuine recognition of their harmful behavior or honest attempts at reconciliation. Dad's business had indeed collapsed completely, forcing them to sell the family home and most of their possessions to avoid bankruptcy, but their outreach to me focused entirely on their financial needs rather than acknowledging the years of emotional damage they had caused. Mom's reality check had come in the form of other family members finally expressing their concerns about her treatment of me, as word of the wedding confrontation spread through extended family networks and old friends began questioning dynamics they had observed but never addressed. Several relatives had reached out to me independently, sharing their own observations about favoritism and cruelty they had witnessed but felt powerless to challenge. Boundaries maintained with my birth family were firm but not cruel, allowing for the possibility of future relationship if they were willing to acknowledge their behavior and make genuine changes. I had blocked their phone numbers and social media accounts but left open the possibility of communication through my attorney if they ever wanted to engage in family therapy or honest conversation about reconciliation based on mutual respect. The new family I was building included Victor and his wife Elena, who had welcomed me into their circle with warmth and generosity that demonstrated what healthy family dynamics looked like. Their adult children, who lived in other cities but visited regularly, had embraced me as an honorary family member and provided examples of siblings who supported rather than competed with each other. Industry recognition had come in the form of a prestigious award from the Regional Restaurant Association for Outstanding Management Excellence, acknowledging both the business success I had achieved and the positive workplace culture I had fostered. The awards ceremony had been attended by Victor and several colleagues who had become genuine friends, creating the kind of celebratory moment I had always imagined sharing with loving family. Future plans included opening my own restaurant within the next 2 years, with Victor's encouragement and financial backing, focusing on innovative fusion cuisine that reflected both my professional training and personal creative vision. The business plan I was developing emphasized community engagement and social responsibility, creating employment opportunities for people who had overcome personal challenges similar to my own. The wisdom gained from surviving family toxicity and building a new life had given me empathy for other people struggling with similar dynamics, and I had begun volunteering with support groups for adults recovering from narcissistic family abuse. Sharing my story and offering encouragement to others who were questioning their own family relationships had become personally meaningful work that provided purpose beyond professional achievement. My peaceful conclusion centered around gratitude for the painful experiences that had ultimately led to freedom and authentic happiness. The humiliation of being seated at the staff table had been the catalyst for meeting Victor and discovering opportunities one never would have found while trapped in my family's limiting expectations. The public confrontation that had seemed so devastating in the moment had actually been the beginning of my real life. The lesson I learned about chosen family being more valuable than blood relationships had been reinforced repeatedly as my new relationships provided more genuine love, support, and encouragement in 6 months than my birth family had offered in 27 years. True family, I had discovered, was characterized by mutual respect, honest communication, and unconditional support rather than obligation, manipulation, and conditional approval. As I reflected on the journey from that humiliating wedding night to my current life of purpose and fulfillment, I realized that the greatest gift my family had given me was showing me exactly what I didn't want in my relationships. Their cruelty had taught me to value kindness, their manipulation had shown me the importance of honesty, and their conditional love had helped me recognize and appreciate the genuine article when I finally found it. Has your family ever made you question your worth the way mine did? Share your stories in the comments below about overcoming toxic family dynamics or finding your chosen family. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about resilience, transformation, and the courage to choose yourself. Don't forget to share this with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better than conditional love and manipulation. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the courage to write your own story of healing and happiness. Remember, sometimes the family that truly loves you is the one you choose for yourself.